So welcome everyone. I'm Noreen Savage and this is Starting Out Bright. I'm so glad you're here and you're going to love our guest tonight. Sonja is here in the house. And just before we get to having you meet Sonja, I'd like to tell a little story about myself, just so you know who I am and who I'm not. And who I'm not is anybody official with Bright Line Eating. But the program has done a lot for me, and so I just want to put that out there in front. But who I am is someone who struggled with weight for decades. And back in 2019, I happened to see a post by my friend Lori on Facebook. I didn't even know, she was dieting or anything like that, but she said she lost 57 pounds by using a program called Bright Line Eating. And if anybody was interested, just get a hold of her. So my little hot fingers flew over to Messenger as fast as I could. And she proceeded to tell me that there was a book written by Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson, and there were 4 bright lines: no sugar, no flour, 3 meals a day, and weighed in measured portions. And when Lori told me that, I thought, absolutely no way. There was no way I could do anything so restrictive, so, just so different as Bright Line Eating. And but I do like Lori, and we got together for lunch. She explained a little bit more about the program, and I just let that sit. I let it sit for 2 months. And she suggested I get the book and I get in a Facebook group called We Eat Bright with Lines. So I did. I got the book, got in the group, and what I was seeing was people, then and now pictures. I was seeing posts of encouragement and hope. And I told myself that if I lasted 1 year on Bright Line Eating, I would do what my friend Lori did. I would post on my Facebook page and I would help anybody I could. Well, the year came up in July 2020, and I'm a Christian. Just before that, I was getting ready to post. I felt God told me, Noreen, you can do more than that. It was the time of Zooms, and the thought was that I could connect people who gave me so much hope with those who were desperately needing help to lose weight. And so that is how Starting Out Bright started. And today, I say you're in for a treat. You're really in for a treat. Sonja Irina Johansen, come on in. And, when someone actually sends me a message and say, who you should interview is this person, my ears perk up because I already know they're going to be fantastic. Well, I met up with Sonja the last few days and we had a great chat. And so I can't wait to have you meet her. Hi, Sonja.
Hi, how are you doing? I'm good. I think we got the memo on the color.
I changed several times. The other shirts were too tight. I was trying to wear. I am having a problem with clothes. I'm in between sizes, too many sizes. But anyway, Sonja, I told a little bit about my story. And when we talked the other day, the concept of what I said, 4 bright lines, part of that was not a stranger to you, or you weren't a stranger to no sugar and no flour. I don't know how far you want to go back, but if you could kind of bring us up to speed on how you got into no sugar, no flour first, and then found Bright Line Eating.
Yeah, thanks, Noreen. It's really good to be here. So I have been working on using food to help heal my body for a long time. And I've been morbidly obese for decades. I gained over 100 pounds with my first child, and I could never get it off. I spent decades yo-yoing, going up 300 up to 300, down to 200, up to 260, and then down to 200, and then up to 315. It was a lovely yo-yo trip. And nothing ever stuck. as a professional woman, I managed the entire cable system for Southern California's Verizon network. And I could not figure out how to manage my food and stop myself from eating. Until I found, I used actually the concepts of bright line eating without even realizing it. Starting in November of 2016, I was diagnosed type 2 and high cholesterol. I did not want to take medication. 10 years previously, I cured my asthma, making huge changes to my food for a limited time. And I was able to stick. So I knew I needed to make some changes. So type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol. Okay, that means oil and that means sugar. And I was already gluten-free. So I basically cut out sugar, low glycemic. I only ate low glycemic foods and flour, but it did not change my my A1C level at all. And my cholesterol actually went up. I was able to lose about 50 pounds from November of 2016 until I found bright line eating. I was really getting discouraged because the whole reason I was doing this was because I wanted to no longer be type 2 diabetic. I found bright line eating. I read the book in a day and a half. The first chapter, I was sold. I realized then, okay, it's not my fault. I'm sophisticated.
And you're talking about the willpower chapter, right?
I am.
Right.
I am. That to me was the kicker. Now, of course, Susan goes into a whole lot of other brain science, and it was very validating for me. And I just decided, okay, I happen to have one of these crazy brains. So now that makes sense to me. And so I made changes. I got a scale. I started weighing all my vegetables. Such a huge number of vegetables. It was so liberating to eat this way. So that was the beginning of the last time I had to lose weight.
Now I want to back up just a little minute. You said something about oil and sugar when you referred to your cholesterol going up and type 2 diabetes. Can you explain about the cholesterol? As far as, even though you had been eating a certain way, you mentioned the other day that there's fat that comes into your body as you're losing weight, right?
Yes. So the reason my cholesterol level was going up actually was because I was releasing fats, the stores in my fat. And that was disseminating cholesterol into my bloodstream. So it was a temporary thing when I first started losing weight. I didn't know that at the time, but I cut out oil because I had just heard that was that was probably the explanation. I went vegan as well because of the cholesterol issue. So there were a lot of changes I made to my own food plan so that I could fight this why. My why at the time was I did not want to be type 2 diabetic, and I did not want to I didn't want to take medication. And I knew in the past that I'd fixed things in the past, and I was shocked by the diagnosis, and I wanted that. I never thought I would lose the weight.
Wow.
Never.
So you got into the book, you're identifying right away, here I am successful. This is not my fault. My brain is not working. Did you identify then as a food addict right away?
No.
Okay.
No, as a matter of fact, that didn't even enter my, I read it, I'm sure, but it didn't hit me until a few months later. I was in boot camp and that topic came up, and I was actually very resistant to that. Mm-hmm. I thought of an addict as somebody that had, yellow teeth and rotting teeth and yellow skin and, shaky. That's what I thought of as an addict. And that wasn't me. But the more that I realized that sugar and flour just did not serve me, the more I realized at some point it actually doesn't really matter if I'm an addict or not. I know that if I eat those substances, there's a very good chance that I'm not going to be able to stop.
Right.
And that's my clue. Okay. Is that define me as an addict? It's up to you to decide that. But I just know I'm not going to eat those foods anymore.
And as you said, you really decide that they're not serving you anymore. They may have at one time, but they're not serving you right now. You mentioned boot camp. You got into boot camp rather quickly, right? And you made that decision after like trying to do it yourself, or just as soon as you discovered that there was help available? Because at the time you went in, I don't even think there were Facebook groups, were there?
Yes, it was 2017. It was May of 2017. The book had come out, and Susan was doing boot camps at the time. I had never seen a vlog or a post of any kind from Susan. I just read the book and I started doing it, and I realized I needed more community. And that's when my roommate mentioned that there were actually boot camps. And so I signed up right away. And that really helped me. There were communities. I believe very strongly in the boot camp. The community atmosphere there, if you can get to it as a trusted space, that's the key. If you don't feel comfortable, like right now, I don't know how many people are on this call, but if you don't feel comfortable with the community available to you, you can't let go and have the vulnerableness and the vulnerability that you need in order to get this stuff out, because it's not about the food, guys.
Right.
It's not. Yes, there is an addictive substance out there called sugar and an addictive substance called flour. And yes, there are probably some others on that list. I have a few. Nut butters is not my friend. So yes, those foods are addictive. But what was I going with, Noreen? I forgot what my point was.
Well, with boot camp, you what was the biggest advantage of being in the boot camp when you hadn't seen a vlog one? You hadn't seen any of that. So my understanding is that there are modules, but are there phone calls too that you can jump on?
You can jump on. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been in boot camp, but yes, you can jump on phone calls. There's coaching calls with I'm assuming it's still with Lyndon and another coach. There's coaching calls that you can get on once a week. There's the Facebook page is where you can get your community connection. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not much of an introvert. So it wasn't challenging for me to just put myself out there. And I started making connections pretty quickly. And that was the key for me, is the connections. And I didn't know at the time that trusted connection, trusted community is actually the antidote to addiction. Mm-hmm. If you think about what you're feeling right now when you're sitting here, and maybe you're going to ask a question and maybe you're going to be nervous about it, but you get that question out and you get validation for it and appreciation for it and thanks for it. That is the antidote to the feelings that we get when we're eating. We're eating to numb out often, but we're eating to provide solace for ourselves, to give us warmth and support. And when we can find a trusted community, that's when you can balance and help, because it is really hard to change your food. There are so many aspects to it. There are neural pathways. I mean, think about the path you take home from work. If you're driving and you know there's a place that you veer in, we call it a fast food place, right? There's a place you automatically veer in. You have developed a neural pathway for that. Right. So that's not even about food addiction, although there is a reward at the end of that little veering. But that's about a neural pathway that you've established. Then let's talk about emotions.
Right.
That's the key, in my opinion. That's the key to kicking all of this, is if we can figure out what it is that's underlying, what it is that's causing us to face plant, is what I call it when we get in the food. What is that? Because if you think about the addictive aspects of sugar and flour, you remove those cravings after a week or two. That addictive quality is gone. Why do I go 6 months and then face plant?
Right.
It's not because of the addiction to the sugar and flour. It's because of something else.
Well, and it's sometimes something that even happened a few days ago, or something you're anticipating, not even in the moment. So these emotions come up. I like how you call them outsized emotions, because they're connecting our security blanket with us, I think. And so then you've now gotten into boot camp. You have this trusted community for you. You're feeling comfortable. You're feeling like you can share. You're feeling validated. You must have been getting a lot of information, and at the same time, you're now doing the mechanics of the program. How long did it take for you to see a difference? There was a question on, if you don't mind sharing, your A1C level. How long did it take before you actually saw some results?
When I started eating this certain way with no sugar, no flour, no oil, low glycemic, my A1C didn't change at all. That was about 6 months. I got my A1C reading 4 weeks into the program, and my A1C had dropped 0.4 points. So and I actually asked the question in one of the coaching sessions. I said, what is it about the difference? And we actually are, when we're eating a bounded meal. In other words, we're only eating at a certain time, 3 times a day or whatever. If everybody has their own thing around that. Some of our sweet ones who have had surgery have eat 5 times a day. Point is, if it's bounded quantities, then you have intermittent fasting automatically. That's what you're doing. Even if it's 12 hours only in between, 12 hours is beautiful. But the point is, you're intermittent fasting. And that was the key for me, I believe, to shift my A1C. My cholesterol went down in 4 months, my cholesterol went down from 350 to 155.
So you never got on metformin or anything for the cholesterol? No. That was your why.
Yep.
You had avoided that. What kept you going? Because sometimes you have to transition now. You've already accomplished that. I'm kind of there right now myself, but you have a why then. What kept you going? Just you're feeling so much better, or what?
Well, I'm feeling like $1 million. I actually decided way earlier, before I even had an inkling with my test results. I decided, I want to say it was 4 weeks into the program, I felt this peace fall over me. And the brain fog lifted, and this peace fell over me that was profound, Noreen. It was profound. And I decided then I was going to eat this way, even if I never lost another ounce.
Wow.
Because of how it made me feel. Now, I have a sophisticated system, and I call it that because I have a tendency to become allergic to things that most people don't. My system decides that, oh, that's not healthy. We're gonna react to that. So I had a lot of challenges, and I've had a lot of challenges in my life because of that. But I found that when I ate this way, my well-being, my inflammation, my sense of self, my clarity, my fog, my peace, nothing was going to change that, Noreen. So I made that pact with myself then.
Wow.
So your why will change. My Nonscale victories list is one of the things that's helped me.
Oh my goodness. Sonja goes, I'm going to send you my Nonscale victory sheet. What was it? 130 on the list. This actually, I had tears because I wish so much I had written. I'm only about halfway there, but all these little things, as I was saying the other day, one day I realized I had crossed my legs. I'm like, what's up with that? I mean, things like that. But you went on and just, capturing the joy of that moment, writing it down. That was incredible. And I hope we get into talking more about that too. But I kind of want to shoot over to, because we're talking about this sophisticated system. We talked the other day about like the gut biome. Mm-hmm. And how important was that to when you were fixing your asthma problem?
It was pivotal. I used a plan that it's called the GAPS diet. I used a plan that was heavy on starving the bad gut biome, if you will, bad as in not serving me, and feeding the good. So I had a lot of different probiotics, natural ones like kefir, kombucha, sauerkraut brine, lots of pickled vegetables. I ate a lot of different probiotics, and I added those into my food. Very important. That balanced my gut biome enough that I was able to release my asthma. My asthma was horrible. I had 4 inhalers every day. I used a nebulizer treatment regularly. I had chronic bouts of bronchitis and really, really bad asthma. They gave me shots every 3 weeks to inhibit my histamine levels. It was a really terrible time. But in that year, I was able to stop the shots. I was able to calm my histamine levels, and I was able to heal my gut lining. At that point, I could have had dairy if I chose. I had been dairy intolerant, but I was able to realize, oh, I can do this. And healing your gut lining is a big piece of this puzzle. But my sense is, in addition to the addictive qualities of sugar and flour, I think we have gut biome that wants to be fed. And if we're eating certain foods, even if we break our lines, let's just say for grins every month for one day or whatever, we're feeding that gut biome and it explodes quickly. Our gut biome balances very fast and it explodes very fast into the negative.
And so when you're saying going off plan or something, are you talking specifically sugar and flour?
Yes, generally. I mean, there are other things that we can eat that can boost our negative gut biome. Like if you decide to, multiply your grain by 7.
Oh,
right. So grain can also be a source to feed your gut biome. And I believe that there's a huge communication system. It's the vagus nerve, and it looks like a tree. And it sends signals to and from the brain to the gut, back and forth. And I believe when we have an imbalance in our gut biome, it's sending a signal: feed me, Seymour, feed me.
Mm. Now,
and
is
so
that
I think that's
Ghrelin too?
The Ghrelin is another fun thing. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone. And I found out through taking a genetics test that I actually have an overproduction of Ghrelin. And for my first 2 years, I will confess, I was hungry a lot. I was really hungry a lot. I ended up adding exercise in, which is another thing I want to talk about. I think there's a problem with that. I think we need to do exercise. 30 minutes of walking or some non-exercise activity thermogenesis to keep us moving, to keep our metabolism moving. But the gut biome aspect of this whole equation is underserved. It's not terribly discussed. If you break your lines by having a Diet Coke, for instance, or if you have a piece of candy or a glass of wine, all of those can impact your gut biome. And so that's the reason, in my opinion, that abstinence is so important. It really balances very quickly, and it lessens those urges, those connections, those conversations that happen in our head, mm-hmm. that cause us to want to faceplant.
That's really interesting. Another thing that we talked about the other day was now kind of pivoting back off of the food part, but the emotional part, mm-hmm. the outsize. And I know that you get involved with parts work.
Yep.
And you had an interesting way to explain like the 3 major parts that we have. If you could talk about that a little bit. I found that fascinating.
The program the program that was developed by Richard Schwartz, called Internal Family Systems, goes with the idea that there are parts of us that are basically battling for dominion in the moment. And some of these parts come up because we have a very strong history of checking the boxes and doing things the right way. And there are some people who have a really strong manager part that's doing a beautiful job of keeping them in their lines. They love the box checking. They love the weighing. They love everything about it. And they keep us strict. And they're often very critical. Mm-hmm. They're often very critical and using a critical voice to get us motivated. Then there's also something called protector parts that will want us to sit on the couch and, eat all afternoon, or encourage us to watch Netflix and chill for hours, or procrastinate and have us really spending time averting from what we really need to do, the hard stuff we don't want to do. So these parts are protecting us. The other parts are what they call wounded children, which are parts that generally hold all of these really tender feelings that are often found from childhood or from, bullying in school, any number of reasons. It doesn't really matter where they come from. The fact is they're there. And all of these parts generally don't realize I'm 62. They sure don't, unless I'm able to talk with them. They generally think I'm 12, I'm 5, I'm 7. And what happens is this is where I find the outsized emotions come in. Because if you can imagine trying to get a 5-year-old to do something, they're going to have a really outsized intensity about it to make sure that we get that thing done. And that's the feeling that I get when something's coming up and I can feel this resistance, I can feel the procrastination, whatever it is, or I'm hearing the inner critic. These are all parts. Just like if we're going to buy a car and we want that red Mustang and we know we need to get the black SUV. The part that wants that red Mustang is going to be really, really persistent.
Right.
So what I think though of these parts, first of all, every one of our parts loves us. And they're trying to do the best. And if they're really critical, it's not because they don't like us. It's actually the opposite. It's just worked in the past. How often has that critical voice gotten us up off the couch and gotten us over to finish our test in college? How often has that critical voice gotten us to get up in the morning when we've only had 2 hours sleep because the baby's been crying all night? So that critical voice has gotten me to where I am today, and I'm very blessed and thankful. And what I've had to do is have conversations with them to change that manager part to a mentor.
So just kind of a softer voice.
Exactly. And once they realize that I'm not 12 and I don't need that pounding inner critic, and they realize, oh, wow, you've done a lot. And I'm able to thank them for their contribution up to this point. That's where parts work is invaluable. There's a shift that happens so managers become mentors, protectors become advocates. And those sweet wounded children do not need to be afraid anymore of the big bad guy that was bullying you, in junior high. They don't need to be worried about it anymore once you let them know, hey, I got this, and we're going to have fun, and you're going to go and play all day long. They become spunky kids instead of wounded children. And that's where I like to move things. So
can you share the story you told me? Well, it's not a story, it's a life story. Because I thought that it really explained well. You brought yourself to the 5-year-old child with your grandmother. And that really explained to me how that moves from a wounded child to the spunky kid. Could you talk about that a little bit? So it's more of a visual of actually the process of getting there?
Yeah, absolutely. I was 5 years old and I won a state piano competition in Minnesota. And my grandmother came up to me afterwards. She was so proud of me. And she said, oh, I can't wait to enter you in more competitions. You're going to just knock everybody's socks off. And I was absolutely terrified. And I didn't even realize this at the time, but I had this little part that had taken on that pain and that uncertainty and that huge fear of success and fear of failure, both. Little Sonja, in her cute little dress with her little white socks and her patent leather shoes, was sitting right in front of me one day when I was trying to figure out why I was so scared to do things in my life, why I was so scared to move forward. And when we talked to her, it was so obvious to me. Well, of course, at 5 years old, I didn't think I had it in me to win another competition. And my grandmother had these huge expectations, and I loved my grandmother, and I didn't want to disappoint her. So do you know what I did? I stopped playing piano.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tragic if you look at it that way. And it's also really enlightening at 59 years old to find this out.
Right.
And realize, so little Sonja, we had a talk with her. She relaxed, realizing, oh, wow, you have already done all this stuff and you've had great successes. And I don't need to worry anymore. If you do fall flat on your face with something, it's really okay because you're an adult and you can take care of yourself. You're not 5 anymore. And so I have a dress hanging in my bathroom to remind me of her. And I wear dresses now that I used to never wear any dresses, and I wear dresses now. And as a matter of fact, when I was actually the MC for the 2018 family reunion, and I wore dresses the whole time, and I had little Sonja sitting with several of my friends virtually in my head. She was sitting with several of my friends, not at all worried that I wasn't going to do a good job.
Wow.
And it was so cathartic. I can tell you that parts work can be really wonderful. And don't ever think that these parts, just because you hate what they're doing, just because you hate the fact that they keep making you go. I mean, you find yourself in the refrigerator or find yourself half finished with something. And you're like, how did I get here? That's a part. That's part.
I remember when we were in the beginning days of COVID, kind of a lockdown. And I was very close to hitting Wonderland. This story just reminded me of that moment. And I knew that I was frozen. I was just simply frozen. I could not figure out, well, apart from the childhood came back. And I started saying, I didn't know anything about parts at the time, but I just kept saying, we're just going to take this as far as we can take it. Meaning bright line eating. I'm just going to take it as far as I can take it. It's no worries, like I'm talking to myself. And, that got me through, just every time I'd freeze up, like the fear of success, of what happens if you lose weight. It's not just all great things. You have to face some things that may have come up in the past. Mm-hmm. So, it's just really interesting.
Well, and there's even more to that. I know a lot of people that struggle when they get close to a goal. I there was a reason I kept an extra 200 pounds on my body. Actually 170 when you account for excess skin. There was a reason.
And we got to talk about that too.
So one of the things that I find very clear is that we are complicated. And as I mentioned before, these emotions come up, and there may be reasons why we need to have that boundary, that barrier of excess fat. There are a lot of reasons. There are many. There's tons of research that says, especially people that are overweight have probably had some form of trauma in their lives that causes them to want to protect themselves by keeping excess skin on their bodies. Very clear about that. The first time somebody noticed me, honestly, when we carry that much excess weight around, we're invisible. Yeah. And that's a safety feeling. Nobody cares about me. Nobody's looking at me. Nobody's thinking of me in any way, shape, or form that might be traumatic or threatening. And so when we start losing weight, we have to deal with this stuff. And that's scary. And that's why community is so important. And that's why being vulnerable is so important. And recognizing what is it that's causing me to not be able to get below this certain point. There are adiposity level set points. That's a whole science. There's a whole science around it. And I love talking about that. But there are reasons why we get stuck at certain weights. And I never went below 200 before bright line eating. I could not get below it. It was like this, I had to actually, even in bright line eating, I had to put the scale away. I had to give myself this requirement. I could not weigh myself until I had meditated twice a day for 7 days and written in my journal for 7 days.
Wow.
And it took me, and then after I'd done it for a week, guess what? I didn't care. I didn't care about the scale.
Oh.
And if you think about it, I was above the 200. I'm 5'3". Do you think the scale really mattered?
Yeah.
The scale is a comfort, and the scale is a marker, but the scale is also just a measure of gravity.
Right.
And there's not a single person aside from maybe a carnival barker who's going to know how much I weigh except me.
Right.
I wear my clothes a certain way. I feel great, whatever. Nobody knows how much I weigh, and it doesn't matter. It's how I show up. So
this is true. And that's, again, talking about, doing these kind of explorations within yourself. And I want to talk about the thing that I think goes with the parts work is your joy work, which
yes.
is a decision.
So one of the things that's really beautiful about our protector parts is that they want us to feel comforted and supported and happy. And so that's why they don't want us to stick to a plan. That's why they want us to eat. The first thing we ever heard when we were, when we were 4, the first thing we went to was the only thing we had to help us at the moment, and that was food. Right. So many of us started our food journey early on, supporting ourselves with food and feeling nurtured and supported because we weren't getting it elsewhere for whatever reason. But one of the things that I encourage people to do is front load joy. So you actually played one of the songs that's one of my favorites, which is Happy by Pharrell.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was hilarious because I actually use that in my membership group. We often will play that at the end of a call. It's a happy song. It makes me want to dance and clap and sing. And so there's several things that happen when we dance and sing. One, you're activating your vagus nerve. So there's 80% of our serotonin, which is a happy hormone, is produced in the gut. And when we sing, we're activating the vagus nerve and activating that serotonin. Now, I want to caution you that if you've got somebody in the house that doesn't like the way you sing, you may want to change some things, wear headphones and don't care. For one, that's a possibility. But when you can front load your joy, and I call it that, if you think about raising your vibration, raising the attitude that you have, raising your energy level to a place that brings you joy. Most people at my age forget that if they dance and sing, they have a burst of happy hormone just from dancing and singing, finding a playlist that works for you and get excited about it. And so I call it front loading joy. Yes, I do it. I do it in the morning, and I call it front loading joy because what happens for me is that my parts are like then calm down. I know I have a long list of things I have to do every day, and they know it, and they're watching out for it. But when I start my day with happy and dancing and singing at the top of my lungs, activating my vagus nerve, flooding my system with serotonin, feeling really good about myself. When I start my day there, my protector parts relax. They're like, okay, all right. She's prioritizing this stuff. We're happy about that. Okay, now you can go ahead and do all the things you need to do. And there's much less resistance.
That is so great. I do have a question here for you. You, Sonja. When you come from big numbers, how do you keep yourself motivated? And when you do land in the ditch, what tools did you find most helpful getting back on track?
Great question.
Yes.
Because it took me 2 years to get down from 315 to 145. It took me 2 years. Now, I did not face plant during that time, but I had many circumstances that were really, really challenging and depleting. My suggestion is to really evaluate your why and figure out why you got in the ditch. It's not the food. Something or some things happened. I call that SWCC, stuff we can't control. Something happened and your reaction to it required you to go to food because it was the only thing you knew how to do and the only way you knew how to fix that thing. There's so many things we can't control in this world. Oh my goodness. And then let's add COVID onto the mix. So,
and you are quite the detective, you said. You love puzzles. And I'm just going to put a plug in because I know you're not going to. I know that you do have a group and that you offer coaching. So I want to give you a minute to talk about that, because I think you seriously have some great skills to help people to sort all this out. What are some other things that people can do then? If it's not about the food, what is like a practical solution to finding yourself in the ditch and getting yourself out?
So first of all, isolation is a really big problem, if you will, a real big concern for me when people are in our circumstances. When people have a food obsession, you can call it addiction if you want. When people have a food obsession, they often isolate, and that's the beginning of the problem. Because isolation by itself causes all sorts of emotional tolls. And so my recommendation definitely is community, finding a trusted community. Now, the problem with Facebook in particular is that it's mostly texts, and it's very, it's not tactile. Like I can't feel that. And when we're vulnerable, yes, we often get appreciation and thanks and gratitude and courageous, yay, rah, rah, you. But it's set apart, it's separate. And so I started a group where we meet 3 times a day for a half an hour just to check in. It's organic. We can get into some really deep topics, or we can talk about the weather. But the point of it is on Zoom. And so we can at least have some sort of a tactile connection with other people. That's an important aspect. And we also do book clubs. We're studying all sorts of things. We've read, I don't even know how many books, and we read them at on the call, so that there's no homework, because that's one of the issues I've often found, is people not feeling like they have the time or the place to study.
And
so
then
we
they
read a
check
chapter.
out.
Yeah, exactly. And you feel less than, you're critical of yourself. Why can't I even, read a chapter? My God, you suck. We say all this stuff to ourselves. And so I've tried to limit that. And in my coaching, I dive deep into the whys of why we do what we do. And they're not always obvious. And I can often see a pattern the longer that I work with someone. And my sense is that once I can figure out that pattern, once they have that epiphany, there is a shift, and that does help. People are never where they were. I don't care if you're not working with anyone, you're never where you were. Even if you keep repeating the same face plant every 4 days, you're never where you were. That food just does not taste as good.
Interesting. And so if people want to get a hold of you, I see a website, Transform with Sonja, SONJA.com.
Yep.
Is that the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, my phone number's there.
Okay.
You can also friend me on Facebook. And my information on the membership group is there. And also my private coaching is there. There's some other things that I'm going to be starting soon. So please, at the very least, get on my mailing list. I'm going to be I'm going to be working on some things. Patricia's on right now. Actually, she's not on screen, but Patricia and I and several others are going to be working on a new program that I hope to start pretty soon. So stay tuned.
Great. I want to talk about, you talked about exercise, and the idea of 30 minutes a day can be scary. But you were saying the other day, that doesn't mean 30 minutes straight.
No.
Just get up once an hour.
Right. So most of our Fitbits and our iWatches and everything else have a little moniker that says at 10 minutes, mine alerts me if I haven't moved in 50 minutes. And the concept of non-exercise activity thermogenesis, it's a big fancy word. All that means is basically get up and move every hour. And that is actually better than 30 minutes of exercise. And by getting up and move, I mean just walking down to the mailbox and back, or climbing a set of stairs and coming down again, or getting up and, doing a circle around your block. Just a little bit of movement It is all that's needed. And what that does is actually elevates your metabolism on a greater scale than 30 minutes of walking every day or 30 minutes of cardio or whatever. It's really hard sometimes to motivate yourself, especially if your leptin is not in production. If you're still in dopamine overload, which happens when we eat too much sugar and flour, where we're high in our dopamine flooding, until we can dissipate the dopamine in our system, leptin doesn't get produced. And leptin is the get up and move hormone.
And get up and move, and then this is going to help your skin, right?
There's all sorts of science out there about improving your skin. Here's what I want to say. I released a crap load of weight. Okay. And so I will always have these unless I have surgery. Okay. No amount of autophagy scrubbing, no amount of creams is going to, I actually had the funniest. I had the funniest when I went to a spa treatment and they were giving me this little tube for tightening up my skin. I just started laughing.
Well, you know what? Does anybody really know how to deal with that? I mean,
yes, there is a lot out there, and I have there's a lot out there. There's infrared. There's dry brushing. There's bouncing on a little bouncy thingy, one of those little trampolines. There's lots of things that you can do, and the more that you can do it, the better you'll see. And I will honestly say that my Shar-Pei's eyebrows, which, do you know what a Shar-Pei is? They've got the wrinkled dogs, that's what my ass looks like. And I will say that has diminished substantially in the 3 years that I've kept this weight off. So it does go down. It does go down, but it's not going to go away, guys. And the hardest part is this is not body dysmorphia. This is not something in my head that I can't get rid of. No, this is a fact. This is a fact. I have excess skin here. How do you look at that? You talked about skin sisters. What is that all about? So one of the things that was challenging in Bright Line Eating was at the time that I was there in the midst of my weight loss journey, nobody really had a real understanding. Susan used to say 10 pounds of excess skin because that's what came off if you did stomach surgery. That's approximately what the doctor said. So that was in her mind. Well, guess what? I have excess skin on my tops of my hands. I lost weight in my head. I have excess skin everywhere. And I know that because I have all these fun hats and they don't fit me anymore. So my shoe size, everything, there's so much change that happens.
Oh, yeah.
There's so much change that happens. And so how do we measure that? Because we can't go get a DEXA scan or a bod pod because they actually don't know how to measure excess skin. As a matter of fact, if you've ever gone through a TSA and had an x-ray and it lights up like a Christmas tree because it thinks that you're carrying all these explosives when it's really just my angel wings. So the TSA, they've got to pat you down and they're like, do you want to go in a private room? I'm like, nah, I'm good. So I think it's funny, but it can be really, really scary and sad for some people.
It can feel demoralizing.
Exactly.
You've done so much work on yourself. And,
exactly.
You have to deal with that too. And actually, I think I've had even a block about skin. Like in my mind thinking, oof, because I had like over 100 pounds to lose, and it's like, ooh, what's it going to be like back? It's not going to be like when it went up.
All I can tell anybody that's listening is please make sure you do the calculation. And I can share it with anybody that wants to know about it. But there's a calculation that we've done. Skin is 14% of our total body. Our skin. Now, when we gain extra weight, our beautiful, sophisticated system adds skin to cover everything, right? But when we lose it, that skin doesn't go away. So that difference I calculated to be 28 pounds. So I had approximately 200 pounds to lose to get to my right size body based on the French formula. So that meant I had 28 pounds of excess skin And that was an accurate number because when I got to 145, it felt right. And that's 30 pounds above my French formula. So just
French
FYI.
formula is 5 foot is 100 pounds. I'm 5'2", so that would be 110.
Mm-hmm.
But if I need to lose 100 pounds, that's 14%
Of 100.
You add the 14.
So there would be an additional
go,
14 pounds approximately
yes,
that you would want to add to that 110 pounds.
Yes.
So your goal should be 124 or 5.
Except I have more than 100.
Right. And that's the minimum. And again, the French formula is not necessarily the be all and end all.
Yeah.
But the important thing is to not get caught up in that stupid number. Get to a place where you feel good and see how it feels for you. You know, maybe you're a size 8 or a size 10 or a size 14. Maybe that's your happy space. Stay there. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Live it. Love it. Create your non-scale victories list.
And stay there then. Stay there in the confidence and hope of knowing that you can stay there. That's the amazing piece to me.
Exactly.
Like, even if you're at a plateau, to think like, I'm at a plateau that I've been here for a month. I haven't gone up. I haven't gone down. That is amazing right there. Seriously.
I agree. I've lost hundreds of pounds in my lifetime.
Yes.
I've never been able to keep it off. And that's the beauty of this particular concept of abstinence. That isn't food to me. Sugar and flour are not food. They're processed, over-processed. The food industry works on the bliss point to have a combination of fat, salt, and sugar to create this really blissful thing that's going to send my addictive, food-obsessed brain into cardiac arrest practically at the idea of eating this stuff. It's not food. It's not food, folks. It's not the food that's sustaining me. It's not the food that's giving me the energy at 6:30 at night in my time when I've been up since 3:30 this morning. You can tell I'm energized about this topic, but I have energy because I've eaten so well.
Right. And that stuff is poison.
It is.
I mean,
it's not food. It's not even not my food. It's not food.
Wow.
So when they go to the buffet, and they say, "Oh, you don't have a dessert? You're not getting a dessert?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good." And yet they won't criticize you if there's 5 things on your plate. They won't bat an eye, but they really think it's weird if you don't have, that's the
normalizing food part.
Yes.
We are getting close here. And I've got to ask you, you had 130 non-scale victories. What are I mean, it's hard to say what are your top 3, but when you think of really the non-scale victories that like, wow, I did that, what are they?
The first one is probably that when I first started Bright Line Eating, when I first started my last weight loss journey, I could not climb my stairs with my groceries. And about 2/3 of the way through my weight loss journey, I ran a half marathon.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. You don't have to wait till you get to goal to be happy. You don't have to. The first time I felt giddiness was after my 5K. Giddy. We numb ourselves from the negative emotions. We also numb ourselves from the good ones. So I felt giddy. So the second one is probably everything about an airplane. I did a lot of travel, and being able to walk down the aisle without turning my body, being able to sit in a seat. I got a request from a flight attendant to switch and sit. I was sitting in a window seat, and I got a request to sit in a middle seat because there was a family that needed to sit together. And I was so thrilled because nobody would have asked me if I weighed 300 pounds. They wouldn't have asked me to sit in a middle seat. No, they wouldn't have asked me to move, but they asked me to move. And that was thrilling to me. Yeah. Every time I got on a plane, I crossed my legs and I show the length of the seat that's still there, the seat belt. And I'm just so thrilled. I'm so thrilled that I get to experience that in this. It's just, and probably my favorite though and this is probably TMI, but this is something coming from big numbers that was just so poignant for me. I can go into any bathroom and wipe myself.
Mm.
And that's really poignant for me. And that's so validating for me that, yeah, I did this thing. And it was really hard. It was really hard to use a bathroom. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
yes.
But there's a whole list of them.
I
There's
know.
a whole list of them.
So great.
Make your own list. Start your list. Start it up.
Tonight,
Those are your
there's probably
whys.
somebody here, or else, if not here, and thank you for letting me record this, Sonja. There's somebody here that is considering doing bright line eating, or maybe they have fallen face planted in the ditch and they're really looking for that word of encouragement to get out. What would you say to them?
You're worth it. The hardest part is we get so critical of ourselves when we do something that we don't want to do. Don't forget that this is our crazy brain. This is our crazy brain, our parts, our crazy lives, our complicated world that we're living in. There's so many reasons why we aren't getting to whatever it is we want to get to. Let's not even talk about weight loss necessarily. It's every goal that we have in our lives, everything that we want to do in our lives. It's complicated, and life is richly complicated. Remember how important you are and talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. And if you hear that voice, that critical voice, say, is that really true? Am I really a loser? Am I really, unable to do these things? No, I show up time and time again. I'm here now. You're on this call right now.
We sure are. And I speak for everybody. It's been so amazing. You have so much to give. And I hope those that can will find you, at your website, transformwithsonja.com. And I know just reach out to you. You're very open, and it's been amazing to meet you. And I'm so glad that our paths have crossed, and you're going to be giving hope to so many through this episode, and I know just in your future life. So I just want to thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all your wisdom, words of encouragement, and just brutal truth. I love the front-loading joy. And if I do nothing else, I'm going to do a lot more of that. That is just awesome. Any last words before we close up?
Well, I want to thank you, Noreen, for providing this kind of forum. I think it's so important, and you're a great interviewer. And you have a real skill, and I think you're using your gifts beautifully, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks for being here again, and thank you, everyone. I so appreciate you, and I hope you'll tell your friends about Starting Out Bright, because these stories are just amazing, as you just heard with Sonja. So I'm going to close as I close each night. Good night. Stay bright. Don't let the bed bugs bite. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Noreen.
So, Sonja, how would you like to play 3-Question Thursday?
Sure.
Well, I understand from our conversations that you have been the detective in your own world of finding out that you don't necessarily agree with grains too much, or they don't agree with you, but you have used sweet potatoes.
Yep.
Correct? What are some ways to use sweet potatoes?
Oh gosh. Somebody asked me once if I have stock in the sweet potato industry because I talk about it so much.
Well, tell us what's so good about sweet potatoes.
So sweet potatoes are actually listed. Stephen Guyenet wrote a book called The Hungry Brain, which talks about adiposity level set point and ways to shift your metabolism, ways to get past a plateau, all sorts of things. And one of the things that he lists is that sweet potatoes in particular mimic for us the same kinds of things, the same kinds of satiety that happens to us when we eat certain sugar and flours. Sweet potatoes is incredibly rich in nutrition. So I highly recommend, if you can get as much sweet potatoes into your body as possible. It's considered a grain on the Bright Line Eating program. I recommend also not going back. If you've been struggling with the weight loss plan, I recommend adding sweet potatoes at lunch and dinner, 4 ounces lunch and dinner, and starting your program that way. That makes a huge difference often. It helps so many of my clients. It makes a big difference if you can get a better start. It allows you to have a stronger foundation for your food plan. So sweet potatoes, you can make them mashed, you can make them, you can bake them, you can slice them and bake them, you can use an air fryer, you can stick them in the microwave, you can boil them. There's any number of ways to cook those things, and all of them work.
I've got to get more involved with sweet potatoes. I want to ask
Costco
you,
sells big bags of them, and I buy 3 at a time, and I roast them up, and you can stick them in the freezer. You can do 4-ounce portions and stick them in the freezer. They're great for traveling. I take them with me whenever I'm going somewhere. They're my breakfast grain. So I highly recommend them.
Fantastic. The other day you mentioned prickly pear syndrome. What is that?
Do you know what happens when we get rid of sugar and flour? Everything pisses us off. Everything is outsized. Everything is nasty. And I call that prickly pear syndrome. Whenever we're without it, and when we have to give it up again. So what we will find over time is that those things that send us into hangry mode or whatever, that send us to that nasty place, when we can relax into that new place and preferably find something to replace that treat, redefine a treat, redefine the thing that is numbing us out, redefine what is nurturing us. When we can get rid of that and supplement it with that front loading joy, as I've mentioned, the things that are outsized for us, that I call it prickly pear syndrome. When things are still crazy, we can calm those down over time. But the prickly pear syndrome happens when we let go of sugar and flour. It is a fact because we don't have anything to replace it. It's our numbing agent. And now what?
And so now we have to feel our feelings. Who wants to do that?
Exactly. We've never done that. How many of us are toddlers with a temper tantrum because we've just never had to feel our feels? And we don't get to feel the giddiness and the delight and the glee either.
Yeah, giddiness like a half a marathon and a 5K. I have one more question for you. What is a favorite mantra? Do you have one?
You know, the one that I've always used is I eat in black and white so I can live in color. And that does not mean that I eat boring. That just means I'm specific about what I eat. I'm very clear about the foods that I put in my body. But the one that I've really loved recently is cry a river, build a bridge, get over it.
Wow.
That's my favorite new one. It has so much richness, and it tells us to feel all our feels, to feel them, and then get motivated once we've gotten that cry out, get motivated and build that bridge, and then get over it.
That's so awesome. I love it.
I know.
I love it. I got to print that and stick it where I can see it every day.
Yep.
While I'm dancing, uploading my joy.
That's right.
Right. Sonja, what a delight. Thank you so very much for saying yes for when I asked you to be on, and everything that you've done for this program tonight. And thank you for playing 3-Question Thursday.
You're so
I hope you had as much fun as I did.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Noreen.
Thanks. I hope to see you soon. Take care, everybody. Good night. Stay bright.